everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelly Kino, and Hashtag No Limits is about people who society places limits upon but who have busted through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet, "We know what we are, but not what we will become." And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is no better example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, the caterpillar literally dissolves into cells and then reforms into the butterfly. And that's not enough, though. It still has to struggle to get out of the cocoon in order for its wings to be strong enough to take it everywhere it needs to go. That can't be easy, but neither can busting through the limits that society places upon a person. And I have the great honor today to bring to you Emily Stahl. I met Emily a couple of years ago at a fundraising gala, and I'm really excited for her to be able to share not only her story, but the wonderful things that she is doing creatively to help the rest of us enjoy life. So Emily, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Shelly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to know you because while we met at this fundraising event, it literally was, we just met and we didn't really have time to get to know one another. And so I'm excited to get to hear your story. So tell me, what is it that qualifies you for Hashtag No Limits?
So I'm 31 years old. So back in 2016, when I was in college, I was kind of like halfway through and my legs were weak. And my older sister was actually diagnosed with it first, but it's called late onset Tay-Sachs. So I was officially diagnosed in 2016, which was my senior year, but it's a rare neuromuscular disorder. It affects our triceps and our quads. So they just get weaker over time. So I started by using a cane, which I still use, but sometimes like on bad days, I'll have to use a walker, or for longer walks, I use a wheelchair and stuff like that. So that's kind of like where the journey began. But we've like stumped doctors since my older sister and I both have it. So It's just one of those fluke things. So
it's not genetic. It's more.
Well, it is genetic, but my dad and my mom both had like a mutated gene. So there's like a lack of the hex A chromosome, but this is where the side of things where I'm like, I'm more artsy, not sciencey. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of like where I, know the most about.
Right. No. And that's, because had we gotten into the whole genetics thing, I wouldn't have. But just the fact that the doctors are stumped because there's two people in the family. So usually the genetics thing.
And I'm one of 5 kids. So we're like the oldest two, but the rest of them seem to be okay. Cause I have a younger sister and she's in her getting to be her late 20s now. And she hadn't had any symptoms, but looking back on childhood, like I played sports, but I could never like run the fastest or like jump the highest. I played volleyball and basketball, but like I always hated running. And I mean, everyone hates running. So like I didn't think anything of it. But when I look back at volleyball and stuff, it's like I could never get a high vertical, stuff like that. And I just liked the arts, which is kind of like why I went that route. So I was like, good thing I like the arts because I'm a graphic designer. So it kind of like worked out for me. So.
Right. So you said it affects your quads and your biceps. Is that right?
Triceps.
Triceps. Yep. And so in what way? Does it just fatigue you? Is it pain?
Yeah. So there's fatigue. There's some achiness. And then it's very like ever since COVID, kind of in the last couple of years, I can feel my quads getting a little bit worse. So it's really hard for me to like get up off of things since the quads don't work. I have to and it's the triceps too. So it's hard to like push up and get up out of chairs. So like even going out to restaurants and like friends' houses, like toilets, like, so I've learned that you have to like problem solve all these little things that come up. It's just figuring out I feel like everything's a new challenge. So it's just kind of like figuring out where events or places will be to kind of figure out how I need to navigate for myself. But I actually got a really cool new thing. They have ergonomical chairs that help you get started to like get up. But I found one that like is kind of like a pump up chair. So you could there's a portable version and I have one on my couch. So it helps me for like restaurants and stuff. And I can send you the link if anyone else is affected in a similar way, but it literally just like kind of like lifts you up a little bit. So it helps me get started to like get out of a chair, or even like getting out of a wheelchair. That motion is just hard for me to do. So
yeah, I would love to have the link. And it's for kind of a personal reason. I have a older uncle who fell recently and broke two ribs.
Exactly.
And getting in and out, getting up and down is very painful for him right now.
Yeah. But all that medical stuff is awesome, but it, it's, adds a price tag. So, but
well,
I mean, it's an awesome invention that it's something I've never seen. I think it's still new, and it's only in a couple of the stores, maybe even one store in the United States. So I'll send you the link.
Wow.
It's called a sit and stand. So,
okay.
But it's awesome.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that many times on other episodes that, we don't know we have a need for something until we have a need for something.
Exactly. And I feel like even disorder, non-disorder related, everyone knows someone, like you just said, your uncle fell, or people who have knee replacements, hip replacements, who have been through these situations. So you never know until, you need it. So definitely handy just for all kinds of different things.
And it was probably invented by someone who either had a loved one or they themselves were in one of these situations that we just mentioned. And they were like, there's got to be something I can do.
That's why I just kept looking it up, because I'm like, there has to be more out there. So that's kind of like my goal. And it kind of brings me to, since being diagnosed, it was my last year of college. And so every year at my neurological appointment, there used to be an MDA rep there. So that's kind of how I got my first cane. And then when I graduated, she was kind of like, hey, would you ever want to talk to our summer campers about going to college and getting a job, going through all that process while having a disorder? And I was like, of course, because I was too old by the time I was diagnosed to go to the summer camp, but I thought it would be awesome. So it was a great experience. I talked to the older campers, I brought some stuff from my job about what I do. And then I just asked if there were any other opportunities. And it was kind of like a year into where I had been a year at my full-time job. So I'm a graphic designer for a home decor company, and I've been there almost 7 years now, but it was like a year into that. And I was just like, the MDA experience was such a positive one. I asked what other ways I could get involved. And they were like, actually, we have this art show coming up in less than a month. So if you want to sell anything there. Yeah. So that's kind of how my business got started. So I wouldn't have the business without, having my disorder, because I had always thought, since I did design, I would do wedding invitations, custom stationery, stuff like that. But then since I was invited to this event, I was like, what can I sell? So I hand lettered 10 prints and I packaged them and I sold them there. So that's where my business, the product side of it, got started. So it was a good time. And yeah, at that event, someone told me, it was one of my MDA friends, but she was like, you should try to sell these in a local shop. So I did, and I got into that shop, and I'm in 3 or 4 shops, and then that's always, growing, and I sell online. So it's kind of grown from there, but it all stemmed from that MDA event. And I would have, it's hard because having a disorder isn't easy, but I've always tried. I mean, there are bad days, but I always try to look at the positive and, what can I do? So.
Right. Yeah. And so MDA, Muscular Dystrophy Association, yes. I'm not sure if we said that at the beginning.
Yes, no, I
think you did. Okay.
No, sorry.
No, that's okay. I try as an educator, I always try to make sure all acronyms were said at least one time. So that hopefully everybody felt like they were on the same page. Yeah. And so what does the future look like for you? Is it expected to get worse? Is it going to debilitate you?
It's probably going to get worse with time. I have a stationary bike and I'm trying to just stay as active as I can. I can already feel especially with COVID and not going out as much, my quads are definitely a little bit worse, but I'm trying to just keep what I can. So, but it can affect your vision. It can affect, swallowing, because all the muscles and stuff like that. So I'm trying to just keep what I have and we'll go from there. Maybe a wheelchair eventually, but I'm trying to stay as mobile as I can, at least to keep the leg strength that I do have, and then to strengthen the leg, like the muscles that aren't the quads, like all my other ones. So at least those will be stronger. But I mean, I've had falls, I've sprained both legs, and between my ankles and my feet, I've sprained and like done all the things to those multiple times. So, and then I had a slight tear in my left knee and my meniscus a couple years ago, and it's never 100% healed. So it's still, especially with the change in the weather right now, I'm just like, I just feel the achiness, but it's like, if I have surgery on it and am off my feet for however long to heal, I'm afraid it'll get, my legs will get worse. Right. So trying to avoid surgeries if I can, but just kind of doing what I can. So,
yeah. So you had mentioned at the beginning when you were talking about, when this happened and all the different things, like when you go places now and you have to sort of figure out, where I'm guessing exits are compared to where you have to be and where bathrooms are. And so do you find that people are treating you differently in a bad way since knowing this about you, or maybe people don't even realize it about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for the most part, people have been accommodating, because if I have to go to certain places, or for my business, I've had like an event at a photography studio, and I'm like, hey, what does the entrance look like with the parking garage? Like all of those things that you have to like plan out now. Everyone's been pretty nice about it overall. I just know I get anxiety going into places being like, trying to find XYZ, because it's like, where is parking is kind of number one. Number two is, are there steps inside? Or like, I went to a barbecue restaurant this past weekend and there was one huge step up. They at least had a handle, but my mom went in first and was kind of like, hey, do you have a ramp? Because my sister was coming too with a wheelchair. We were able to get in that front door. Like I was able to kind of like maneuver in, but just knowing those other options, like, hey, we could have come in the back or a different door if needed. Like, it's not always like the open to the public door, but it helps for certain situations. So.
And that kind of brings me to the next question, is because I do talk to so many people across the country with so many different ability levels.
Yeah.
Are you finding more places small? I tend to think that this is smaller places with smaller number of employees, because I think ADA, you have to have 50 employees before some of those regulations kick in. So when you go to like your local restaurants or your local businesses, do you find that most of them are accommodating already? Like they've already got things in place, or is it different?
For the most part, every now and then it'll be a weird situation, but I feel like I guess I don't go out to eat that often. So COVID was horrible, but one of the good things that COVID brought was curbside. So a lot of places do curbside, or I'll call and be like, hey, is there someone that can bring it out, even if they don't say they specifically offer curbside? But yeah, for the most places they do. And there was a restaurant, Amaghetti's on the Hill, that just like reopened. And so it's an Italian sandwich place, but in the front they had, 2 or 3 steps, but on the side they had a longer ramp. And I think that door was locked. So I just called and they just let me in or whatever. But I told the workers, I was like, this is life-changing to have a ramp like this. And they had a super accessible bathroom with all the bars, and it was a newer restaurant. So I talked to the owner, and I just told him, I was like, hey, as a person living with a disorder, like, you made this so easy for me. Cause he was like, yeah, if the side door, for a safety issues, they were like, you might just have to call us. But I feel like they had pretty good protocol on that. So
that's awesome.
Definitely try to like be positive to the people that do have it, although most places should, but the ones that I feel like go the extra mile, definitely, I'm like, okay, I will be returning to this restaurant. So.
Right. And I think that makes a big difference. It's like you said, the ones who are willing to go the extra mile. And,
exactly.
There's been so many things that have been, oh, we need this for somebody in a wheelchair or for somebody with a disability. And then there's so many people that use that service or that thing, like the curb cutouts or the bars in the bathroom. I mean, you don't have to have a disability to need those things.
Exactly. And it's, people with knee replacement, just all kinds of things. You just never know. But that, I feel like I've had really good experiences lately. Like I went to Grant's Farm. They have a ramp because they have the tram and they have like a ramp. They ask you, hey, do you want to get out of your wheelchair or stay in it? Like, and the worker there even told me like, they do, you just have to kind of like ask a worker. But like if someone's not comfortable doing the tram, they can just take you up like a different way to get there. So some bigger places like have those plans in place for situations like that. And I was like, thank you, because it, it makes a difference. So,
well, yeah, you have, so I have determined in my own non-scientific way that there are only two disabilities and the two disabilities are visible and invisible. Mm-hmm. And so you have what I would consider one of the invisible ones, because somebody doesn't look at you and say, oh, she's got something that, I need to accommodate.
And that's like the harder thing. Like, that's why I feel like when I first started using the cane, I didn't want to, but it helped me. I felt like it was a signifier that people knew like, oh, hey, like, especially if you're walking in a bigger crowd, if someone bumps into you, you can fall down. I think I saw it somewhere as like a dynamic disability, because it's always changing, since sometimes, because even when I'm in my home, I don't use my cane because it's all like right here, but it's like sometimes I use a cane, walker, wheelchair, but it just depends on the situation. But
and do you have a handicap sticker?
I do. And that's exactly what I was going to say. So I actually have two of them. So I keep one in my car and then one in my purse, because my mom drives me a lot of places. So whatever car I'm in, but that's the funny thing, not funny, but like you said, do people respond like badly? I feel like sometimes there's a negative, like if I pull into a spot, I'll get dirty looks and I put my handicap in. And then once I walk out of the car with the cane, then they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, like you just never know people's situations. So,
right.
But
I think we've done a disservice to people who have the kinds of needs that you have, because even on that tag is a person in a wheelchair. Yeah. And so, in the typical person's mind, I think they expect that only people who can do nothing outside of a wheelchair are going to be parking in that spot.
Exactly.
And I mean, I helped a friend of mine recently. I took her to a doctor's appointment, and she's like you. She can use a walker. She has a wheelchair sometimes for longer distances, and she's very mobile. Even like she doesn't have a cane, so it's either the walker or the chair. And we took her vehicle, and she had the power chair, and she was getting it out of the back of the van. And somebody walked by and they just kind of looked at me because she was doing all the stuff and I was just standing there. And I'm sure they were thinking like, why aren't you helping her? Or, who is that for? You're both standing.
Even people in wheelchairs, some people can walk a little bit, some people can't walk at all. It just depends. And like a lot of people in wheelchairs have stronger arms, so they can do some of those like transfers. But since I have weak triceps, that's, super hard for me. So it's just interesting to see the different reactions. But one of the weirder ones I got was, so I have a card. I was in Pensacola Beach a few years ago, and I realized that I could get like a national parks card. So everyone with a handicap or something like that, you can get into the national parks for free. And so we had went a couple times, didn't have any issue, but then my mom handed it to the guy to get in. He was like, made a face or was like, are you sure about this? And I pulled up my cane and my handicap pass, and I was like, what do I need to do to prove it? But like, if I didn't have the cane or the pass, like that is the hard thing I found, since I do walk a little bit, but like, he let us in, but my mom pulled over and like went to like the manager and was like in full mama bear mode. Like, excuse me, you need to teach this guy to be like, he was just being a jerk about it. Cause it's fine to like have a question. I get it. But that's a frustrating thing too. Like, I don't know if you've seen those articles out there about like people that were using wheelchairs to get on airplanes, that didn't have disabilities or anything, just to get like first in line. And that stuff is frustrating to me, because I just feel like it makes the situation even harder for people in my situation who actually have something, can still walk a little bit, but like, I don't know. People are crazy.
Yeah, and exactly when you were talking about your instance at the national park, that was exactly what I was thinking. You know, or like the like I said, the person looking at myself and my friend when she was in her chair up. That, you know, there are people who are going to manipulate situations, and then it does make it difficult for those who truly have the need. And you know, so then you get questioned. And then, of course, it's personal because it's like, well, I wouldn't fake this. Why would I fake this? You
exactly.
know?
Like, I don't want to have this in the first place, but.
Right.
But
so,
that's kind of, oh, no, go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's kind of why I got involved with like the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And I've been an ambassador for like the last 2 years. So, and I'm also involved a little bit. There's a National Tay-Sachs and Allied Diseases Association, but the MDA is so much more, like, it's a larger one, so it's easier. Like, there's more events and more stuff like that across the country. But I just want to like get my story out there and just, I mean, it's not always positive, you know, there are bad days and stuff, but just to like spread the word about, because even in the MDA community, my disorder is super rare. It kind of falls under the other category. So,
okay. And so what I started to say before is something that I have found with my friend who has to use the wheelchair sometimes is just like it sounds like you are too, you know, you're of average or above average intelligence. And when she's walking, people react and speak to her one way, but when she's in her chair, people react and speak very differently to her. Do you have, or have you had similar experiences?
Not yet, because I would say the wheelchair is still kind of new for me to use. I feel like for the most part, I haven't had any that happen yet, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Or even with my cane, I guess a little bit, because I'll get the people who'll just smile, or they'll be like, "Oh, we'll pray for you," and you're just like, or they'll be like, "What happened?" or like knee surgery and all that. Or the face when they're like, "Oh, I had to have this too," or they're like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "I have a disorder," and then you see their face kind of drop because they thought it was just like, a surgery or something. So I guess there is a little bit.
Yeah, she's been treated as if it's her mind that has the disability, not her body.
Yeah.
And so people will talk to her, or if she goes to doctor's appointments, like she's kind of let me view from the outside a little bit, what it's like for her when she goes to this, just so I can understand even more. For sure. I mean, they'll often, if we're together, they won't talk to her. They'll talk to me about her and like talk to her.
You're like, literally ask her the questions. Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, well, I'm glad you haven't had those experiences, and I hope to not add the word yet, because hopefully you never will have those kinds of experiences, because I can just imagine how incredibly frustrating and defeating that is.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of, since it was like end of college into adulthood, it kind of taught me who like true friends were. It kind of teaches you, like, one of my best friends is a special education teacher, and she's just wonderful. But some people have been friends throughout your whole life, and I've got some of those to this day, and some of them have just fizzled out because you're like, things have things change, and like, I don't drive a whole lot of places, and some people understand that, some people don't, which is totally fine. But it's just, it kind of puts into perspective like who real friends are and stuff like that too as you get older. So
yeah. And another experience that I hope you don't have is that I sometimes think people, I've kind of, instead of the other two categories of invisible and visible that I gave, I say real and fake. Because a lot of people will say that they believe in those invisible disabilities, but then their actions don't follow.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you really don't believe it, because if you did, your actions would follow.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
So let's talk about, thankfully it doesn't sound like you've had very many bad experiences, and I'm really pleased with that. I can't ask you, one of the questions that I would have asked had you grown up with this was like experiences in school, because I've heard people who have other types of disorders that they're not 100% affected by it all the time, in the sense that it really debilitates them or really slows them down, or like you were saying, sometimes you need the wheelchair because it's, your muscles are tired, you haven't used them, it's a long walk, whatever it is. And I'm guessing it sounds like you have a wonderful employer.
They're amazing.
And so you're probably not getting the, oh yeah, right, you can't come in today because your Tay-Sachs is acting up. So,
well, I can talk about that a little bit. I went to school for 6 years. I went to SIUE over in Edwardsville, but I started
me too.
You did? That's awesome. I loved it. I started as a psych major with an art minor, and I was going to go to grad school for art therapy. But 3 years in, I took my first graphic design class. So if I switched majors, I would have had to go 5 years. So I just added art as a second degree. Gotcha. So that's why I went 6 years. But it was kind of like a weird experience, because it was like the first 3 or 4 years, it was almost normal. But like I knew something was wrong towards the end. But once I had my cane and stuff, since I had been there for so long, and I was like a front desk person, like that's where I worked in one of the res halls for like 3 years. So it was more like explaining over and over again to all the people that I already knew. So it was kind of nice once I graduated college and got my job, because this is the full-time job I'm at now is the first job I had out of college. So I've been there 7 years in September, but I came in with the cane. So I feel like it was kind of like part of my identity now. I didn't have to like explain over and over to new things. So now that's kind of been the refreshing thing. But it was funny because I just had to adapt over time. Like I eventually got a cushion for my seat to make it a little bit higher for stuff like that. And I told all my coworkers, I was like, I'm just letting you guys know, like, there's a point where I'm going to fall in here. Like, it will be okay. Like, but I just said, this is kind of like what my life is. And I kind of deal with it with humor a little bit. But then it was funny because once I said that, it's like in the next couple of weeks, I fell a couple times, and it's like, just gotta like, like I had like my foot got stuck on my bag and I just wiped out, and I'm just like, I look awkward getting up, and I'm like, this is, what I deal with. But it's been nice because since COVID, even before COVID, I worked from home 2 days a week. And then with COVID, I work from home full time for the most part. So that's very nice. I go into the office every now and then, but it's made just not having to like get up and like go somewhere. I just go from the bedroom to the office, or I work on my couch a lot. That just saves so much time. Or like on my breaks, I can do a load of wash or the dishes or throw something in the crock pot. Like it's convenient for people, but with a person with a disability, then at the end of the day, when I'm tired after work, it's not like, oh, I have to do dinner or wash, all these things that kind of helps get a couple things done throughout the day. So they've been absolutely wonderful. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. I've heard the horror stories of students where, like they have juvenile arthritis or something that, it's not debilitating to them every day, or they have migraines, and they don't get them every day. And it's like, oh, sure, you get one on the day you have a test. You're just making this up.
Yeah.
No,
I know that's the hard part too. And just being open and honest. And that's why I feel like I'm an over communicator, but I would rather be like, hey, here's where I am. Like I just kind of touch base weekly on my schedule. Cause when I was having physical therapy or different doctor's appointments after a fall and stuff like that, I would have more appointments. So I would just kind of like touch base and be like, here's where I am. Like they're a little bit flexible with me so I can, but I still work those hours and, get everything done that's needed. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So tell us about some of your designs. I mean, I can see the I Love St. Louis thing behind you. But,
so this was used recently for a photo shoot I did. That was like one of the props. And I was like, gotta put that in my office. But and I'm just clarifying for who's ever watching, the stuff I'm going to show is my business, not like the day job stuff. So just there's no confusion there.
Yeah.
But here's a fun sticker I did Burn Boot Camp had an MDA fundraiser, so I did one of their things is like high five. So I drew a hand. This was the second year I've worked with the Blues for 3 years so far, and I'm going to be doing another Blues theme night this upcoming season. But
congratulations.
Thank you. But this was for the teacher appreciation night, but I did a hand-drawn blue note. So I thought,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of, it got approved for, this project and everything, but that was one of the coolest projects I've done. Let's see what else. Here's the theme night from last year. This was for nurses. It's a Tervis, but it's hard to see it all. But there's the blue note again, Louis, St. Louis, all kinds of fun things.
And you just freehand all these things, and then you, I guess.
So I started with a sketchbook and a Sharpie. Like I would start by sketching it out, drawing it with a Sharpie, and then scanning it in, editing it in my computer. And then the first year into my business, I got an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil. It is life-changing. It has sped up the process so much. So I still normally sketch underneath, but then I draw on top and make it. But
right.
I have some hats. These are for sale on my website with that lovely I Heart STL design. And you'll see this in a couple different colors, the I Heart STL, because I did it. It's on the Blues thing with a little hockey puck. So that's kind of one of my most iconic designs. But here's the Cardinals one I did. This was a gate giveaway for the kids at one of their games recently. So
I was hoping you were going to show that one.
Yeah, I know. I was so excited. Everyone's like, we need adult sizes. And I'm like, I'm working on it. Like it's just the MLB. So it just, it's all what they want or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I have fun glitter stickers, magnets. Let's see. Yeah. So for the upcoming holidays,
oh, fun.
I have these in wood, and I also have them in acrylic because it's hard to show on a screen, but they look really pretty on the tree with the lights twinkling on them.
Yeah, I bet.
Regular stickers and glitter stickers. Glitter stickers are new, so I'll probably have more designs coming soon.
Okay.
Magnets, same design. That's just like the most popular one. So. And then I have
I have that one.
Oh, yeah. And then I have some new stuff. So this is one of my new designs, St. Louis with all the icons. So.
Oh, fun.
So I have like all kinds of different things, but that at least gives you a taste of it. And I think for the giveaway, it'll be one of my tote bags. Here, I can pull up a tote bag. It'll be probably not this design, a different one, but a tote bag filled with some goodies. So a print, cards, and some stickers. So probably a couple pins. So it'll be a fun little it'll be St. Louis based because that's like my most popular things. I still do non-St. Louis stuff, and I always want to like grow the non-St. Louis stuff, but the St. Louis stuff is what people love and kind of what sells, especially since I've worked with like the St. Louis Blues and the Cardinals. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah. So I want to speak to the giveaway because we haven't really talked about that. So for anybody who is watching this, whether you're watching live or you're watching in the replay within the first 48 hours of this going live, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you share this either on YouTube or Facebook, if you follow Emily on Instagram at Emily Stahl Design Co., and I'll spell that out, and if you comment on this thread, then you'll be entered into the drawing to win the stuff that she was just talking about. And I'm going to thank you, Emily, for doing that. This is something that it's been on my mind to do with different of my guests, and you're the first person that I'm actually doing it with. So
well, it really hopes that I have a bunch of product things.
Well, yeah, I mean, we like St. Louis, so that's a good thing. But yeah, so Emily is on Instagram at Emily Stahl, and Stahl is STAHL, and then Design Co. for Design Company. So make sure that you are doing that. You're sharing this, you're liking it, you're subscribing to both of us, and then you're letting us know something about, you're watching it hashtag live or hashtag replay or, hey, Emily, whatever. Just any kind of comment.
And if you have any questions, you can comment and I'll try to watch again, like go back and answer any questions if people have further questions or want to know more information about my disorder, anything I'm involved in, all the things.
Yeah. So what else is there in your life besides work, and MDA?
That's kind of sums it up.
Honestly, I don't know what other time you would have left.
My side business is kind of like in any free time that I have. So I do the side business on nights and weekends, or like today when I'm like, hey, I'm going to take lunch at 1 p.m. So, take a little bit longer lunch and then I'll work a little bit later tonight. But, that's kind of how it is. I still plan time for some fun with friends and, hanging with the family. So it's a good time, but it's kind of like taken over my life. But it's good because I feel like my business brought me out of my shell too, because I talk about my disorder through it and I'm pretty open because I'm like, hey, here's what I need, for certain events I do, or I do networking events. So I had one last week and normally my mom will go with me to them, but it was one of those things where it was just me and everyone was so nice because they were like, oh, do you want to sit down? And I was like, save the spot for me. Let me go get my cushions so I can get out of this chair. Like it, everything is just like its own little thing. So I'm always, just doing what I can. So I stay busy, but it's a good time.
So what are your hopes for the future for you and like for Tay-Sachs even?
Yeah, that's why I kind of work with the MDA too. I'm hoping through research and different studies that have gone on that there'll be some kind of cure. That would be lovely, or at least slow down the treatment, or not the treatment, slow down just the weakness happening. So, but my goal for now is just to bring awareness and kind of raise money for the MDA, because for my disorder, but for, all the people who are in similar situations as me. So it's been a good place to connect with people who have, it's not the same experience, but it's a similar one. So.
And that's it. You said the word treatment and we didn't really talk about that. Is there anything that?
There's nothing right now. I think there's some tests. I can't think of the word. Trials, studies or something like that. They're doing like genetic therapy and stuff like that. So I think stuff is kind of like in the works and in process, which gives me a little bit of hope, but I'm kind of like, probably will be in a wheelchair eventually, which, everything just has to keep adapting. So we'll see, but I'm trying to keep what I have for now and just do what I can, but there's no cure. So it kind of is what it is. But I was also happy that, I had an almost normal childhood growing up. So at least I could kind of like feel like what it was. But like, I feel like I always knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what, which is like weird looking back. So it just kind of like confirmed that.
So if you were to say to somebody, hey, if you have these feelings or if you are experiencing this, what would that be? What would you say to someone?
Just listen to your body. Because about getting a disorder. I would just say, listen to your body and, get multiple opinions. I actually had a friend from college who was in the process of being diagnosed with, it's not what I have. It's a different situation. It's a different disorder. I'm not sure I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but, she had to go to multiple doctors because a lot of them were saying like, is this a mental thing? Is this just in your head? And she's like, these things are happening to me. So you just have to like trust your gut and, find multiple doctors. It's not easy. And I had an easier time since my sister was already diagnosed. She went through the process of like elimination. It's not this, it's not that. So we kind of figured, and every year they would ask her, does anyone in your family have similar things? Finally, one year we were like, yes. So it's just kind of, you kind of have to be your own advocate, even just after having it. It's kind of like you have to be the push for some of those things. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate those words of advice because I do think sometimes people feel as though they are all alone and that they're almost like they've gone crazy because nobody will listen to them and will say, oh, okay, we need to investigate this. I don't know the answer, but I know that there's something going on.
Yeah, I would say maybe even reach out to their local MDA or like social media has been a big factor too. Because I kind of started another Instagram to share my story more. It's called Creating Inclusivity, but that's a whole nother thing. But it's nice to connect with people that you relate to and, in similar situations. So, I mean, you could even reach out to, obviously I would say start with the MDA because you're not going to know exactly what you have, but just to be reassured, like you're not the only one feeling this way.
Yeah. And I do. I think that's a really big aspect of life for people with disabilities is, even people who have, the most common ones, they still feel alone. I mean, when I wrote my book and I interviewed each of the different families, there's 9 different families represented in the book. And each one of them told me in the course of the interviewing, I feel like I'm all alone, or I felt like I was all alone for so long. And I mean, we know that there are millions of people who have disabilities now, and there's special ed classrooms or special ed eligibility in every school district around the country, and yet I almost feel like it's sort of a disservice to those families because we're so protective of their identity because we confidentiality and we don't want anybody to know what's going on, but yet then it's like, well, I don't know that anybody else is going through what I'm going through, and I think reach out.
Yeah, I think that's where like the MDA summer camps are amazing because I've heard some of the other campers talk about their stories because it's hard, it's hard going, but I feel like there was a girl she had just been diagnosed and she didn't want to go, but she ended up going, and best experience of her life because you meet people who have been through a similar process and like a similar phase of life as them. So, and it's just like a good group to just relate to or go to on those bad days. So, plus they provide like a lot of resources. So if you need more information or a specific kind of therapy, stuff like that, it's very informational too.
So I want to ask you about your other Instagram account. But before we get there, is there anything that that we haven't shared about so far that you were hoping I would ask you, or that you were going to get a chance to talk about?
I think we covered it all.
Okay.
I had a couple bullet points written down, but we did good.
Okay. All right. Good. Because I try not to, for anybody who's listening, I don't really prep the guests. I just ask them to come on, and then I say, it's a conversation. We're going to see where it takes us. So, so let's talk about the inclusive.
Okay. So I basically started this. I have a personal Instagram I never post on, but I have my business one. But my mom, so I guess this is kind of going back to some of the bad experiences, but my mom and I we did go to the Ozarks over Easter weekend because we needed a break. We were like, okay, let's just get away. And we booked at the Four Seasons because we looked online. They said there was a handicap lift into the pool. And we get there, the guy tells us there's 20 stairs to get to the pool. And we're like, so is she supposed to carry? Like, we were just like, that makes no sense. So you can't get there.
Once you get there, there's a lift to get you into the water.
Yeah. We're like, great, thanks. How do I get there? I guess kids, like, I don't know. But still, if they have a wheel, like, it just didn't make sense to me. And they had just redone their pool, too. So I was like, you couldn't have put an elevator or a ramp anywhere. But we were able to go to another hotel, and I thought it was awesome because they had a lift into the pool and a lift into the hot tub, which I've never seen. But of course, we get there. Both their batteries, they were like, oh, you can just pick one thing to use. But then it wound up, the batteries didn't work. But so, I mean, it was fine. Like, it is what it is. But I was going to send them an email, and I was like, do I send this from my personal or my business one? And I was like, well, if stuff like keeps happening. So started a whole new email too, because I was like, this is going to be kind of like my advocacy one. So then I was like, well, got to start an Instagram. But so I sent them an email and everything, and they should be up and running now. But because I share my story on my business page, but I wanted to share like other experiences like that. So I figured I started with some, quotes and stuff like that, but then I'm going to share deeper stories and more of it. So I kind of was like, so I just wanted a place where I didn't feel bad that it's not, business stuff. It could specifically be focused on the disorder and all of that. So,
right.
And
so I'm going to put that in here.
Yeah.
So I will, if I can get my hand and my mouse and everything to work. So that's also on Instagram. So it's
on Instagram. What? So it's at Creating Inclusivity. So I've been working on connecting with a bunch of people on there. So that's kind of, I followed a bunch of people that had accounts that talk about mental health and having disorders, migraines, like there's all kinds of different things like that. But I just figured this could be a place that it could just be an open place to talk more about my disorder, specific weird things that have happened to me. So, because I feel like there's always things happening or just, stuff like that weekend where you're like, oh, yay, we finally have it. Just kidding. Like, I don't know.
Right.
But figuring all that out is like a challenge in itself. So,
well, and, I've been to hotels where, when I booked it, it said, oh, there's a pool or there's a hot tub or, there's this or there's that. And you get there and, things happen and they're not available for whatever reason. But what I seem to hear more often is that if it is something that is supposed to be inclusive, it's not, or it's not up most of the time.
And the workers don't know how to use it and stuff like that. But they did waive us I think they had like a resort fee. So they like took that off the bill, which was nice. But like when I emailed them and I even, cause I'm in a group, if you want it, I can send you the link to it. It's like the world is accessible or traveling with accessibility. But it was interesting because they shared something about like the ADA requirements for places like that. So I kind of included that and they're like, hey, like, it's not like I was going to go and sue them right away or anything, but it was just like, hey, this is the law, like for future, or if I wanted to like return here, can you make, this happen? So they said they would, but then there's places like Margaritaville. I feel like those bigger places are really good about it because they deal with it more. So they were like, we'll call maintenance to like, they just had to put the battery in, but they already had them all charged and everything. So, it just kind of depends on the place. And that's what I talked to my mom about as well. Like, as I started traveling, I like made a list of like accessibility things that I need to bring with me. My sit and stand. I have like a bed rail that helps me like lift myself up in the morning. So and it comes apart. So I pack all, backup batteries and stuff like that. So it's just interesting. And then I started making a list of like questions to ask places because my list was first, is there a lift into the pool? Now I have to add, is there accessibility to get to the pool since there were 20 stairs at that place? But it's just like, you don't know till you start, till you try going through those situations. So it's just funny to see like, it just keeps changing. So I'm like, it'll just be a note in my phone that just kind of adapts and grows. So
yeah, that would be a very interesting thing for you to just like, have as a handout almost to, people these are the top 10 questions that I ask every time.
That's what I'm going to do eventually is have a website for it too. So that way I can have those resources and stuff like that there. Like, here's my pack list. Cause I was looking, and there's like wheelchair ones and stuff like that. But for people, with similar situations as me, I think that's definitely a good idea to start, making some of those resources just to make it easy for people.
Yeah. And it's just not, again, it's not anyone being malicious. It's just, you don't know what you need until you need it.
Exactly.
Or until someone brings it to your attention. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it seems very obvious to us who have an understanding of wheelchairs. And like, if you have a way to get into the pool, you have to have a way to get to the pool.
Yeah.
If you're going to need the item to get you into the pool. Somebody wasn't thinking.
My mind. Yeah. I was like, okay, you spend the money on the lift, but yeah, I just, That's just the hard thing. And I know the Ozarks aren't super accessible anyway, because it's just a bunch of hills and stuff, but like there should still be ways for at least to get into the buildings. So
Yeah. Well, and I've heard the horror stories of again, going back to a friend who had knee surgery.
Mhm.
And so when they went on a vacation, right shortly after the knee surgery, they made sure, do you have a handicap accessible room? Because that's what they needed. And to get to the handicap accessible room, they had to go around and there was no parking any closer. So they were parked in the front of the building. They had to go all the way around and down a big long ramp.
Yeah.
And it was like, this room was, and it only had the outside entrance. Once they got into the room, they still couldn't go into the hotel through another door. They had to go back out, go back up the ramp, and then come around to the front of the building. Well,
and that's great for someone who's in a wheelchair and is able to do that. But like with me with a cane, it's like, there's no way. Like, that's why I ended up getting the wheelchair for stuff like that, because you just never know.
Yeah. And so, it's one of the reasons, that I do this is to bring that kind of awareness and that perspective. Because, even as knowledgeable as I believe that I am, there's still so many things that happen or that take place that I'm like, oh, well, I didn't think about that before.
Exactly.
And it takes that exposure.
Yeah. And not everyone has that. And it's totally okay. But as long as people are willing to be open and learn, I feel like that just makes the world a difference. Instead of being ignorant and just rude to it, you could just figure out, how to go from there. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, Emily, thank you. It's been very enjoyable getting to know your story and getting to chat with you today. Like I said, if you want to reach out to Emily, it's Emily Stahl Design Co. at Instagram. And she does have her website, which is Emily Stahl. And I had it up here a second ago. Let me find it back so I can pop it back up there. Just emilystahl.com. And again, Emily is EMILY, Stahl is STAHL.com. And they can order all of your products through your website. We do have the giveaway going on. So if you are watching this, make sure that you are liking this channel, the YouTube channel, you're following Emily on Instagram, you're commenting, and you're sharing this because, as I just said, there needs to be more awareness. And with the algorithms the way they are, the more comments, the more shares, the more likes, the more people will get to have opportunity even to know that this exists and to tune in and learn a different perspective. So make sure you're doing all of those things. And I think that's it. Do you have anything else?
That's it. But if anyone has questions, you can comment below, send me a message on Instagram, or I have like a contact page on my website. So happy to help answer questions.
Perfect. And if you love St. Louis the way that Emily and I do, make sure you get some of her swag. Yes. All right, everyone. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
Hey, parents and teachers, are you tired of IEP meetings that feel like a battle? Let's put an end to the tension and create a collaborative, calm, and respectful environment together. Shelley Keno, your go-to IEP consultant, can transform your meetings into positive and productive experiences. With Shelley Keno, your child is her top priority, your voice is heard, and you become confident. Shelley Keno is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time. Visit www.shelleykeno.com for more information and set up your free 20-minute consultation today. That's shelleykeno.com, SHELLEYKENOW.